Welcome to DIY Thursday. I'm Stephanie DiPasquale, the author of Home Rookies, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a quilted placemat. And they're perfect for any season because all you need is a fabric panel to coordinate with your season and then some coordinating colors to go with it. The fabric measurements will be on the website, but what you need is a fabric panel that has square motifs in it, then 3 coordinating prints to go with it, 2 rulers, and a rotary cutter. Now I'm going to take my 6.5-inch quilting ruler and I'm going to center it over the motif that I want to cut out. And this isn't a perfect square, so just kind of do what looks right to your eye. And then I take my rotary cutter, release the safety, and I'm going to just cut around it. And it kind of helps do like 2 sides at a time, and then physically move yourself as opposed to the fabric, so that way your ruler stays in place. Alright, I've got my fabric pressed and laid out now, and I'm going to take my long ruler, it's 6 inches by 24 inches, and I'm going to lay it down so that the top line here is even with the fold of the fabric. And since I have a raw edge here, I'm over measuring here. I only need a 3-inch wide strip, but I'm actually going more at about 4 inches here. So just cut. Then when you're done, just pull the fabric a little bit to the side. Flip it around. And now you're going to line up your 3-inch edge on your ruler. And again, line up the folded edge, which is closest to you now with the bottom. And then cut for a nice 3-inch strip. Now from that block, go ahead and cut 4 sets of 6.5-inch strips. And to do that, I just take the piece, still folded, lay it down, lay my ruler on top, and then cut it. And with one cut, since they're folded in half, I then get 2 6.5-inch pieces, so it goes faster and saves time. Now comes the fun part where we actually get to sew, and you don't have to do any pinning at this point because it's very easy. All you do is you take the squares from the center motifs that we cut out earlier, and then we take the print that goes around it, the 6.5-inch squares, and you're just going to lay that right on top of it so that the edges line up, like so. And you're just going to feed it into your sewing machine, and you're going to use a 1/4-inch stitch to sew that together. Once you have all the 6.5-inch pieces sewn to the top and bottom of your center square, you want to set the seams and press them open. And to set the seams, you just set a hot iron on the seam and then gently press it open. Now I've cut several 11.5-inch strips to go on either side of the unit that we just sewed together. And now I'm just going to take those and flip them over onto the long side and sew down the seam using a 1/4-inch seam, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So what I've done here is I've sewn the sides on and then I've pressed them open on all the blocks. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut them on the diagonal. To do that, lay your block and smooth it out flat, and you're going to take, I've got a 12.5-inch square ruler, and you're going to lay that down so it's kind of tilted on a diagonal with the area in the center. And the way I just make sure that everything is where it should be, and then you just take your rotary cutter and you cut down the sides on the first 2 sides first, and then you're going to reposition it and cut the other sides. That last cut was the most difficult part of this project. From here on, it is easy going. What I've done here is I've cut the next 2 pieces that are going to get sewn onto the sides, and the measurements for those are on the article accompanying this video. And just like we sewed the sides on to the center panel, now we're going to sew these sides on and just fold it right over, and then we're going to sew down the seam on both of the sides for the blue star. Once that's sewn on, then we're going to take the striped flag fabric and fold that over and sew all the sides together. Alright, we are almost done. Now you want to cut 4 strips of 2.5-inch wide fabric by the width of the fabric that came off the bolt, which is usually between 40 and 44 inches, and that'll be wide enough to cover the top and bottom of your placemat. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of cutting it exactly to size, I'm just going to trim it off at the fold, like so. We're going to, again, just sew it, flip it over, right sides together, and sew it to the top and bottom, and we will trim the extra off when we're done. Alright, now we've got these little ends that need to come off the sides because our strips were just a little long. So what you want to do is just take a ruler and line up the edge of it with the edge of the placemat. Take your rotary cutter and just slice that off so that both of your edges are even. We now have our final seams to sew. We're just going to be sewing on our 2 end pieces, which are 1.5 inches wide, and for the full measurements, go online to the article accompanying this video. And again, like always, we are just going to flip those right sides together and sew down the side, and we'll do that for both sides and then press it open and we're done. And be sure to come back next week to see part 2 of the quilted placemats, where I'll teach you how to layer and base the quilts and actually do the quilting on them and then do the binding to finish them off. And then they'll be ready for your table.